Today, Caitlin and I will be talking about how to build upper back strength and how this helps you go from a novice athlete to an RX athlete in CrossFit. And I think this is probably one of the most overlooked areas of the body that many CrossFitters neglect. And we're going to go specifically on why you need to strengthen it and what strengthening this will actually help in terms of transferring to specific movements. If you don't know me, I'm Matt Bamwart. I own Red Wolf CrossFit in Huntington Beach, California with my wife, Caitlin, and we started this podcast with one goal in mind, and that was to make fitness education accessible, engaging, and effective for everyone. So upper back strength. Now, a lot of people think that the lower back is actually what needs strengthening, when really the lumbar there is more for stability, especially doing things like bracing, like for squats or deadlifts, etc. But in terms of the upper back, this is probably one of the most crucial areas and probably one of the weakest areas we see, regardless of what stage you're at in your CrossFit journey. So, Caitlin, welcome to the show. Tell us why, in the first place, we need to be working on our upper back strength.
Well, other than, a nice upper back already looks good on a person. Other than just for aesthetics, it is probably, like you said, one of the weakest areas of the body. And it's definitely something that transfers over to many movements and is one of the reasons why people cannot progress in those movements. And it's a really hard thing to work on. The movements in itself is usually like a bent over row. So you already have to be good at hinging at the waist, and I think people avoid this a lot because it's hard. It's a hard position to get into, and if you're in it wrong, then everybody complains about, oh, my back hurts or my lower back hurts, and it's just because simply we're not good at hinging at the waist, and then therefore developing the upper back.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're speaking about the upper back, I guess a more specific area or a more scientific thing we could talk about is specifically scapular retraction. Now, this is something I learned from my coach when I first started actually digging more into the strength and conditioning realm of specific areas that need targeting. And I remember him telling me specifically, he's like, it's very common for CrossFitters to have a very weak posterior chain. So glutes and hamstrings always need to be developed, especially at least at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Squatting was more of an Olympic style squat, and then we didn't really deadlift as much as we do now in terms of the CrossFit. So we were very quad dominant or anterior chain dominant, which is the frontal part of the body. And also he mentioned that scapular retraction is a huge deficit in CrossFitters. So things like scapular retraction will help with everything and for upper body, including pulling and pressing, which is what a lot of people forget about.
Yeah, I like that you said the pressing too. Today we just bench pressed, and I had just had this conversation with somebody talking about, if I want to have a stronger bench press, I saw online that I'm supposed to have a certain hand width on the barbell, and I was like, yeah, that's because it will help you engage your lats more, which is super important when you're doing bench press, because if you don't have strong lats, you most likely don't have a very good bench in general. So both things go hand in hand. And upper back strength and scapular retraction, like you said, is what takes you from just a novice athlete into an RX or an RX plus athlete. And what we're talking about specifically, an easy example would be pull-ups compared to chest to bar pull-ups. A lot of people cannot make that transition from pull-up to chest to bar pull-up simply because they cannot retract as far back with their scapular motion. And honestly, most people are unwilling to do the scaled variations first, which will help develop that mind-muscle connection in order to retract all the way back.
Yeah, 100%. And not to mention that having a strong upper back or scapular retraction will also help with your posture. It's going to help with your pull-up strength and endurance. It's going to help also with deadlifts, keeping your back in a proper set position. It's going to help with your Olympic lifts, staying stable overhead.
Yep.
It's going to help with any kind of pressing movement as well, like handstand push-ups, bench pressing, push-ups, even burpees when you're getting off the floor and you're tired.
Yep.
Because a lot of people don't realize that when you're doing a pressing movement, especially horizontally, so like a bench press, is that as the bar lowers, you are retracting your scapula with it. Okay, so now maybe the primary muscle groups are the chest, and chest and triceps and the shoulders. But as you retract down, your upper back is retracting along with that, which will help enhance pressing that bar back over and back in the starting position.
Yeah, I really like that you said that because you can finally see that when somebody's doing a push-up, people who have the best push-ups have really good scapular retraction, and you can literally see it happening as they're doing the push-up on the floor, coming all the way down, squeezing their shoulder blades together, and then being able to press them fully apart. I think one of the biggest things that people come into the gym with is they don't necessarily have frozen shoulder, and that's a very common thing that people hear about, but they have a variation of frozen shoulder, and that's simply because if you're not working out regularly for a long period of time, maybe you take a couple years off as an adult, right? You have life happen. Not many times do you raise your arms over your head. And when you stop raising your arms over your head, you don't get that full scapular retraction or the flared scapulars where they flare out and in. And that's how the body is supposed to move. And having that full degree and angle that it can move is important to, like Matt said, progress into like handstand push-ups, any overhead pressing movement. And if you stay stagnant for a very long time, your muscles will therefore get so tight to the point where they cannot move anymore. And that's bad.
No, 100%. And I mean, it also transfers over to things like back squats that people don't think about as well in terms of
grabbing the bar.
Yeah, even though you may not be going overhead.
Yes.
Is that you're still in that you're in that preset position, and when you have a strong upper back, that actually helps you lift the bar on the back squats as well, because it's essentially what's holding the barbell.
Yes.
Is your upper back. That's what's stabilizing it. I mean, your midline stabilizing as well, but
so that you don't tip forward.
Exactly. It also reduces risk injury as well, because I mean, how many shoulder injuries do we see from people who aren't ready to be doing kipping pull-ups? I mean, that's very common, is that I've seen this happen at least 5 or 6 times with people who refuse to do strict pull-ups or ring rows, and they insisted on doing kipping, and over time their shoulder just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, the shoulder, the upper back and shoulders are a very complex muscle group, very, very small muscles that all connect and work as one. And if you have underdeveloped muscles in the upper back, and like we've been talking about this entire podcast so far, I hope you realize every movement requires your upper back to stabilize or move properly. And if you have weak muscles in those areas, there's going to be overcompensation that goes on because everybody wants to, increase weight and lift heavy and do the harder things. But unfortunately, you're asking these small muscles to do a lot of work that they're not ready for. And it's important to have a coach that's going to guide you to develop these small muscles the right way. And that way you don't get hurt in the long run.
Yeah, no, 100%, because, you can't really fix the problem unless you can really articulate what's going on or what level you're at in terms of upper back strength.
Yeah.
So right here, we just broke down on why upper back strength matters. And now we're going to move into breaking down essential movements, training strategies, and other tips to level up your upper back strength. So now we're going to get a little bit more tactical here. So let's talk about the foundational movements of developing upper back strength to begin with. So it's, they're essential, obviously, because it builds raw strength, targeting the lats, the rhomboids, the traps, the rotator cuff muscles like the infraspinatus and the supraspinatus, which is all in your upper back. So let's talk about bent over rows. I think bent over rows is a great starting point because anyone can start with this. And this is one of the most essential movements I have all my PT clients do.
Yeah, just rows in general, okay? Bent over is definitely one of the biggest ways to do it. And I think everybody knows what a bent over row is. Properly executing it is a little bit challenging, especially if you're a novice athlete. So there are different objects that you can use in order to, make it a little bit easier. Maybe doing a landmine row, a chest supported row, a single arm dumbbell row. There's so many variations to get this done, but the frequency of doing this is super important too, and doing it all different ways multiple times a week. I think people just underdevelop or underthink the volume on what is needed in order to develop the upper back. And so for me personally, I would do at least 3 times a week bent over, some form of bent over row. And that's just really helped me develop good scapular retraction, and tempo, I think, is super important when you're starting out, because holding your shoulder blades back is what's going to get the mind muscle connection better, and the stability, I think, that's involved in retracting all the way back and being able to hold that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I do agree with you on the 3 times a week. I think that is the minimum that you need to do when you're working on a weakness. And the volume matters too, because you just keep in mind, if you're new to strength and conditioning or CrossFit, when you're working with smaller muscle groups, you have to hit them with higher volume, specifically because the smaller muscle group requires a lot more stimulus than a larger muscle group. For example, you can probably back squat twice a week, do a heavy one day and then high rep the other and still make really good progress, just because the amount of load you're using and
it's a big muscle.
The large muscle groups that you're using that will require more recovery, whereas the smaller muscle groups will recover faster. Essentially, you can kind of hit that more frequently. Think of it like if you're going to develop your biceps, you can't just do 3 sets of 20 bicep curls once a week. And then
gonna do nothing.
But if you do 3 sets of 20 squats once a week, you're going to get pretty wrecked.
Yes. Yeah. So the size of the muscle group matters, and will tell you how much frequency and how much volume you need to do for those.
Yeah. And just a baseline, basic strength and conditioning principle is that we typically like to hit each muscle group a minimum of twice a week, even if it's a strength of ours, and with a minimum of 10 to 20 hard sets. So that's just a framework we work off of. Obviously there are differences between the individual or what we're training for specifically, but that's just the general guideline if that's what you want to know. Let's go into lat pull downs. I think that's another good one. Lat pull downs, or I guess you could say assisted pull-ups, would be another good version of this. This is a great way to develop upper back strength.
100%. And right now, I mean, in our CrossFit gym, we unfortunately don't have like a lat pull down machine, which would be ideal. But I can't tell you how well bands work. I mean, if you just do lat pull downs with bands, and again, tempo, super necessary, and holds, you will get wrecked from doing some banded lat pull downs. This is obviously a vertical motion. I mean, horizontal is also good too, and that's what the bent over row mimics. And so we're talking about a vertical pull down, holding to your chest. I think chest is definitely the ideal location that you want to be able to pull to and actually touch your chest, so that way there's an end point and you're consistently hitting that end point every single time.
Yeah, and I like that too, because not only is it safer, but you can have different grip variations as well. So if you go wider, you can target the lats more. If you go supinated, you can kind of target the biceps a little bit more. Also, even when you have these different grips, or you have different like the lean away pull up is another good one that I really like, that will develop scapular retraction or upper back strength specifically, because basically what you do is you do a pull up, have your chin over the bar, and then you lean away from it as you go. So you get kind of the best of both worlds, both a vertical pull and a horizontal pull all in one.
Yeah, that one is really challenging.
That one's very hard, especially done correctly. It's lean away pull-ups are one of the hardest things that I've ever done. Are there any other key exercises other than any variation of the row and lat pull downs or assisted pull-ups that you can think of that would develop upper back strength quickly?
Well, these are just general terms. I mean, there's so many different ways to do that. And I think that just comes with, as you become more RX or I guess more advanced in your training, you can do different styles. But for a novice person, just starting with like simple dumbbell bent over row, barbell bent over row, and lat pull downs, I think that's the way to go. Not trying to make it overcomplicated, and just, again, hitting it in volume is what's going to really get you further along in your training.
Yeah, 100%. So before we wrap things up on this segment, I'm just going to kind of give a lowdown of how I approach this with my one-on-one clients. Is that I will obviously have to identify what the problem is first, because without knowing what the problem is, I can't solve it. And then from there, just like I said earlier, we do 10 to 20 hard sets per week, and hitting that muscle group a minimum of twice per week. And then we always look at, first off, exercise selection. Then we look at reps. And then we go into sets, and then we go into rest, and then tempo. Those are the framework that I use. Tempo being the last thing, but doesn't mean that's not important at all.
Yeah, I would say that if you're a novice, if you're a beginner, you can't do a strict pull up, you can barely do a ring row, and you're only doing upper back work 2 to 3 times a week. It's probably going to take you a year, like in all honesty, to actually get stronger with your upper back and be able to maybe do a pull-up, just simply because if you want it done faster, you're going to have to do more work, more days a week, more reps, and otherwise just expect the timeline to be about a year.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take a lot longer when you don't have some focused sort of training. Now, if you're super new to fitness, you will see gains just because you're going from zero activity to a lot. However, once you kind of start getting, I guess, quote unquote, comfortable, that's when things need to change again. And then you need to start either adding in some more specific training, or you need to work well with a coach every once in a while, or the building program build and burn program is a great addition, just simply because we target all those things more frequently with a little bit more volume.
At least 3 times a week, I will have the build and burn people do some type of rowing because, like I said, I think upper back strength is one of the weakest points in the gym that at least that I can see that translates over to all movements across the board.
Yeah. And we do see a direct correlation of people who see accelerated fitness growth when they're either working one-on-one in addition to classes or they're doing the build and burn program as well. It's like the progress is just so much faster.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is like a standard or a like requirement in that would tell somebody that they have a strong upper back? Like how many pull-ups should a male and female should be able to do and be like, okay, you have pretty good upper back strength or pulling strength?
A great question. I would say a minimum of 10 strict pull-ups, bare minimum.
Yeah, for both guys and girls?
For both guys and girls,
Yeah.
I would say minimum. And I would also say
Unbroken, right? I don't know.
unbroken strict pull-ups, like with no kipping, like perfect form. That would be an indicator like, okay, you have good. And I would say that's good. I wouldn't say that's excellent. I would say that's just good.
Good upper back strength.
Yeah, I would say excellent would be 20.
Yeah.
However, it just depends on also the kind of athlete that I'm working with as well, because some people are just bigger, like, and they have strong upper backs. It's just that their body weight to strength ratio just isn't just that great because they're naturally heavier.
For sure. What about a bent over row?
A bent over row? That's a good question because it's going to vary per person. So I can't give like an actual, are you looking for like a load?
Yeah. Or just like, what should people kind of be, like, I get this question a lot of like, well, they think they're good, but in reality, I'm like, you're not even that strong yet.
Bent over row is a hard one to measure specifically for a general guy, just because I prefer tempo. And so also you have to factor in the size of the person itself. So obviously someone like Garrick, who's huge and strong and has a lot of muscle, will obviously naturally bend over row a lot more, but he can't do 20 strict pull-ups.
Right.
So it's hard to like, what is that line? A good test of, I would say a better test of scapular retraction or upper back strength is definitely wall walks that people don't really think of.
People hate wall walks.
And it's specifically because it tests multiple angles of your upper back.
It
because
does.
You start in a horizontal position with straight arms, which is great because you don't have to worry about triceps as much or chest. It's mostly upper back and triceps. And so, and shoulders, obviously. And mobility. So as you start in that plank position and the push-up position, and then you walk all the way up to a vertical position, and then you have to walk back down with holding your body weight under tension, I think that is actually a better test.
Yeah, I really like wall walks. I know many of you out there don't like wall walks, but once you are able to move your body weight freely up and down, you really feel the benefit of what a wall walk tests. And one thing you didn't mention was just the core stability that comes along with that as well. When you're going inverted and you're putting all your body weight upside down on your palms, like it's a very, like you said, good indicator of strength.
Yeah. Now, in terms of how many reps of wall walks, I can't really give you a good number either because we don't really have a benchmark on that. And obviously, someone who's smaller will do better just because they're moving less weight. It's just physics than someone who's bigger. But I would say the ability to at least do 10 wall walks, like back, like unbroken, essentially, like without taking a long rest, is a good indicator. So at least that's just my framework.
10 and 2 minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. 10 and 2 minutes,
2 minutes
would be a good indicator of, okay, you're pretty dang strong, Len. You can lie.
And 10 unbroken strict pull-ups.
Yeah.
It would be my bare minimum. Well, not my, I would consider that good.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the minimum, but it'd be good. But if someone wanted to do kipping pull-ups, I would require them to at least do a minimum of 5.
Yes.
Minimum.
Butterfly would be 10.
Butterfly would be 10. Absolutely. Let's move into supporting movements and variations. So we went over kind of our primary movements of things that will have the biggest impact or ROI on our time. So now these are, I guess, accessory pieces that would work really well in complementing and adding some volume into that without overdoing it. So we have 3 here for you. We have ring rows, face pulls, and dumbbell shrugs or trap bar holds. I would also say farmer walks.
I would also say flies in general.
I think flies are good. I actually think farmer walks or even overhead carries
Yes.
are even better.
Carries, yeah.
Carries in general would be more effective. That's just my opinion, though. So let's talk ring rows really quick, and then we'll move into face pulls and then the carries.
God, ring rows are such a great tool. Anybody who thinks a ring row is easy is doing it wrong, in my opinion. Like, I, to this day, still dread like 20 ring rows.
Yeah.
It is very challenging, not only on your grip, but in order to target the upper back, you have to be very stabilized with the body. No sag in the knees, the hips, nothing.
Yeah,
and
midline works a lot too.
Yes, the midline, and then just really concentrating on using your back to do the entire movement. A lot of people concentrate more on their forearms and their grip, and they're trying to do so much, arm pulling, when in reality it should be more of your back.
Yeah.
And if you are feeling this more in your forearms and grip, I'm going to go ahead and say that you're challenging yourself too much. Your angle is probably off. You need to actually make it a little bit easier so that your focus can be your back. And when you're pulling it back, you can target different angles. That's why I love ring rows. You can do the low lat pull. You can do a little bit higher pull and get more of the upper back involved. And then
you can do like a T row.
Like a T row. And then lastly would be like the face pull, which is the next thing you wanted to talk about, and pulling like towards the eyes. That's going to be super essential if you want to eventually get butterfly pull-ups or chest to bar pull-ups. You need to work on a higher pull versus always pulling to your armpits in a low row.
Yeah, I do like all the variations that you can hit with the ring row, like, including single arm.
Single arm ring.
If you haven't even done single arm ring row,
you're missing out.
I don't know if they're missing out, but all I know is that I don't do them frequently, and because they're very hard. And I don't even think I'm ready for single arm ring rows right now.
You'd have to be almost upright.
Yeah, single arm ring rows are very difficult, especially done with tempo. Now you add in tempo to this. It's one thing to bang out reps, but then you add tempo in. I think one of the hardest things I've done in training was actually supinate ring rows with like a 4-0x1 tempo for like 6 to 8 reps.
Yeah.
At 5 sets.
If you don't know what 4-0x1 is, by the way, it's 4 seconds. Are you talking about hold at the top?
No, 4 seconds
or down. Okay. I think holding at the top is harder for me personally. And holding
ring row holds. Yeah, ring row holds are hard.
Holding retraction is, at least for me personally, holding retraction longer is harder than a slow negative down. I definitely dread that top hold position the most.
Yeah, and if you want to get better at pull-ups, or if you want to eventually get a muscle up, you have to be good at ring rows first. This is your baseline. I know you're going to want to skip this, but I mean, I still do ring rows, and I've been doing CrossFit for 17 years now. I don't skip these things. In fact, quite the opposite. I should be doing them more frequently than what I do right now.
I mean, I can do muscle ups. I can do ring and bar muscle ups, and I can honestly say that my ring rows still suck. And I always ask Matt, like, man, like, how come I still can't string a lot of muscle ups together? Like, what should I be working on? And he always says, you need to do more ring rows. And I'm like, damn it.
And I was like, you need to get stronger.
Yeah, always. You need
it's
the answer. You've got
a technique issue.
Yes, 100%. Every time I ask Matt, why am I not getting something, or why is it so challenging for me? His answer to me is always, you aren't strong enough. It's always strength. It's really never, once you get to be like that RX level, it's really never comes down to the skill of the movement. It's, are you strong enough to perform this under a tax situation, right? It's one thing to perform it cold or like, not in a workout with no heavy breathing. But when you're trying to do it in a workout, it comes down to strength. And so a lot of people out there, you need to develop more strength. It's not just going to be, I just keep practicing the pull-ups over and over again. No, it's strength. If you want to go from pull-ups to chest to bar pull-ups, strength.
Yeah. And also being stronger will help you have more endurance for those skills.
Yes.
So you'll be able to last longer for practice.
For practice. Yeah, exactly.
And there's absolutely no situation in fitness or in life where strength has not come in handy.
Yes.
So my answer usually is always get stronger. And that's actually worked out pretty well for everyone.
No, seriously, like every time somebody comes to me and they want to work on a skill, like for example, if somebody comes to me and they're like, oh, I want to work on bar muscle up, I usually tell them, and I'm very honest, it's like, okay, I need you to spend a month doing more pulling, because there's no point in you and I working together for 30 minutes when you can't last 30 minutes because your upper back is too weak, and we aren't going to get anywhere doing 1 or 2 drills together. It's not going to happen. So generalize strength training first, so that way learning the movement is easier. I think ladies specifically out there, more bodybuilding, more strength. That way you can learn the skill easier, because a lot of times the ladies will look at the guys and the guys will get the muscle up, super fast. Like a new new guy walks in the gym, trying out CrossFit, tries, muscle up, boom, they get it. And they're like, oh, how come he got it? I'm like, well, he already has strength. It's easier to learn something when you have the strength to do it. So that's, I guess, the moral of the story is just get stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move into face pulls. So some accessory pieces here. So it's great for just overall shoulder health and developing the upper traps, which is very crucial for stabilizing overhead movements and pulling in general. So resistance bands work.
Banded or like a rope.
So symmetry ropes work great.
Yeah, like the black rope, you tie it around the bar and then you pull yourself up into a face pull. Fantastic.
Yeah, you can do face pulls with the ring rows as well. So we won't get too much into that just because it works the same thing. So we're not going to, we have really no reason to chat more about what it does. It's just another accessory piece to mix things up. And then let's talk a bit about, we were going to talk about dumbbell shrugs and trap bar holds, but I think carries are actually better.
Yeah, more stability and moving at the same time.
Yeah, because it also, you're getting kind of a 2-for-1. You're as you walk with it, the reason why we walk with it, because it stabilizes the hips as well and the midline as we're walking rather than just standing there doing nothing.
Yeah, and you get more steps.
Yeah, and you get more steps in. Even better, best of both worlds. And that really helps with stabilizing the scap. So typically when I'm working with a client and they're brand new, I always actually have them start with some sort of isometric exercise first before we start moving through range of motion. So for example, I'm working with John. He's one of my new clients and his pressing strength needs a lot of work. So instead of spending a lot of time on bench press, push-ups, all this stuff, and because he burns out pretty quickly, even on things like ring rows and stuff, we'll work on we'll do a lot of like single arm work. So a lot of single arm carries, both farmer and overhead for stability.
Any front rack carries?
We do front rack carries too.
Carries.
Offset, but right now we're focusing on single.
Oh, okay.
First, I always start with single arm first so I can identify which arm is actually weaker and what I can focus on a little bit more. So if I see that his left side is weaker, I'm like, okay, I make a note. I'm like, okay, we're going to focus on this left side and I do a little more volume on that side. So it just helps me identify problems faster because sometimes you can kind of hide stuff with doing double arm.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much with dumbbells or kettlebells, but if you do like a barbell hold or something, you can kind of compensate with the other arm. Let's see.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for carries.
I know. We're talking
about farmer carries.
It works the same stuff, so no reason to get into that. Let's go into programming and progression. Probably the most tactical thing that we can do here. Let's see. So incorporating these 2 to 3 times a week, so 2 minimum, 3 would be ideal, definitely. How would you warm up for this to begin with? Because obviously we want to cover this.
Whenever I warm up for upper back things, I usually either use crossover symmetry or bands. And I do a lot of just straight arm pulling, just like flies and stuff. I try to get my scaps moving in the right directions, overhead and behind me. Sometimes I hold on to 2.5 pound plates. And I think just moving through range of motion helps me warm up. Not too much static stretching. I wouldn't do too much of that. I would do just more like retractions. Just a lot of muscle firing. You need the muscles to fire and retract back. I usually do 15 to 20 reps with a band, or again with crossover symmetry is a great tool to use if you can get one, or if your gym already has one, utilize it. There's a whole flow that you can look up online to go through. And kind of takes you step by step on how to warm up. And then from there, maybe some dead hangs on the pull-up bar just to get, again, that overhead stability and retraction down. And then from there, I just pretty much go into whatever I'm doing that day.
Yeah, so you always want to make sure you have a good warm-up and make sure the reps are a little bit higher, 10 plus reps for multiple sets, at least 2 sets, I would say minimum per exercise of anywhere between 10 and 20 reps. Again, if you need specific help with that, just talk to us. We'll help you out. You obviously need to warm up for this. Please don't skip the warm up for the love of God.
Especially for the shoulders. Again, we're talking about very small muscle groups here. They can easily be triggered if they're not prepped and ready to go. And by triggered, I mean hurt.
Yeah. But yes, and you don't want to get hurt. It's not worth it. And then after that, you go into your primary lifts, which you already talked about, because you want to use the exercises up front that are going to make the biggest impact towards making it towards your goal. Like if you do a bunch of accessory work first, and then you do your primary lifts, you're going to be too fatigued to make progress. And then after that, that's when you do your accessory pieces. So let's say you do bent over row, you do your warm up, you do your heavy bent over rows with tempo. Then after this is where we add in the ring rows or face pulls. This is typically where we add in things that are going to be higher rep and either body weight or
Yeah.
very lower lighter resistance than what we're using for our primary lifts.
Yeah, exactly. You do like the weighted movements first, and then body weight second, and then you finish with the small muscle groups basically after that. I like to do flies or front raises, lateral raises, stuff with like 2.5 pound plates. Like we're talking very, very light. But if you've ever used 2.5 pound plates, you know it sucks.
Yeah. And then in terms of a progression plan is that you definitely want to include deload weeks to avoid overtraining. You definitely want to increase weight, volume, frequency, and intensity over the course of certain training cycles, and also test and retest and reassess of where you're at to make sure that you're continually making progress. And then you actually have some data to back up that you're actually improving. And so this is, again, why it's so important to either have a coach working with you one-on-one or being on a structured program like Build and Burn, because if you're just kind of aimlessly doing it, you're not going to make any progress. You might make a little bit of progress up front, a little bit, just because you going from doing nothing to doing something, but that's only going to last so long.
Yeah, exactly. And you're only going to do the movements that you like versus the ones that you need.
Yeah. And then, I mean, on top of that, it's over time, you're not going to be doing, you're either going to be doing too much or too little. And we've talked about this before and how easy it's to fall into that rut.
Most likely it's too little.
Yeah. And so when you're working with when you actually are on a structured program that complements the classes, that's where people make the most progress, because we actually monitor the volume on that and as well. Any other closing thoughts on, programming and progression?
No, I think we covered it all on that part.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's wrap things up here. So let's just kind of give a little quick recap of everything that we talked about. So upper back strength matters specifically because it's crucial for shoulder health, stability. It's going to transfer to your Olympic lifts, your muscle ups, your pull-ups, your push-ups. Anything upper body or supporting the upper body, your upper back is going to be crucial for developing. We went over our foundational movements. I'm not going to list those off, but always do your primary movements first. And then we went over our supporting movements or variations of those. And then we ended with programming and progression. Again, if you need help with that, just come talk to us. We'd be more than happy to chat with you. So definitely start ASAP on getting that upper back strength stronger. And yeah, let us know how it goes.
Yeah, we can't not emphasize enough how much this is going to help so many other areas of your fitness, including gymnastic lifts and including lower body lifts as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many times squat, deadlift, kettlebell swings, all these things include the upper back, and it's probably the weakest part in that lift that I can see from someone, and I'm just like, yeah, man, you got to get your upper back stronger. It's not the legs, it's not the core, it's definitely up there.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, please leave us a 5-star review so we know to make more content just like this. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Red Wolf CrossFit and DM your content suggestions there. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, good luck. Have fun.
Nailed it.